I am here with Cheryl Brown of Davis, Agnor, Rapaport, and Skalny, and we had so much to talk about, Cheryl, that we had to do an after show.
Oh, I love after shows.
Yes. So we're going to talk about in our after show today is a little bit more about our cocktail.
Oh, good.
And we're also going to talk about advocacy and adult use cannabis in the state of Maryland. So we'll talk about that. So Cheryl, this drink is so good. Like it's a little messy, a little sticky, and it's caramel apples are sweet, so it kind of has to be a little sweet in my opinion. But it's so good. I'm like sipping on it, and I'm like, and I like the caramel and the sugar because it kind of just gives it a little texture, a little something. Because when a caramel apple is sticky and messy. So it kind of has to do that, right?
And I kind of think that we can sit by like a fire pit and sip this, or like one of those fire pits you have on your deck or something. And we can sit there.
I do have a fire. It's a fire table in all
fire
fairness.
table. But that's okay.
It's not a whole pit at this point. It's a table with propane. But it's so good.
It's a beautiful drink.
Yes, it is. It was a great selection, and it's going to definitely be added into my rotation. So, Cheryl, you were on in a previous episode, and if you haven't watched the previous episode, please go back and watch it. But you were on a previous episode, and we were talking about employment laws, legislation, and, we talked about how we do things together in various chambers, but let's talk about advocacy because it's really important for small businesses or businesses in general, not just small, but businesses to be involved in advocacy. What does that look like? And side note, Cheryl, what do you do with the Howard County Chamber?
Well, I was one of the former co-chairs of the legislative committee, and you are now our fearless leader, one of our fearless leader, and now I am the chair-elect of the Howard County Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, so awesome. Congratulations. Yay.
Still have a year.
Yes.
Still next year.
Well, it's coming up. So talk about...
So advocacy is absolutely one of my passions, and I know it's one of yours. And I think from a personal standpoint, it makes me a better employment attorney if I know the legislative intent and I understand the process from the very beginning and why our legislatures are doing what they're doing. So that's personal to me. But it's important to my clients because I get the question all the time about why do I have to do this? Why didn't I know about it? And what am I supposed to do? And because I'm a small business, there's no way I can comply with this law. And you know it as well as I know it. Oftentimes bills pass and it'll be years before a client even knows about it. So that makes me sad if someone doesn't know about it, and I want to make sure they know about it. But and then by that time it's too late. So advocacy gives the business or employers a voice to at least have their side of the story heard, whether it's in Annapolis, whether it's in DC, and be able to talk through the real life struggles of a business owner. How, and you say this all the time, how are they supposed to navigate every single leave that's out there because they overlap? How are they supposed to understand what a definition of employer, who has to comply, who doesn't have to comply? All they want to do is run their business. They're really good at widgets. Really good. And that's what they're passionate about. And they're not going to read. I'm passionate about law and I read all that stuff. But they do. So if they have a voice, if they can be heard, if it tweaks the law just a little bit to give them some type of peace of mind that maybe if they implement or if they try really hard to implement it, that they're not going to be fined every single time they say no or anything like that. So that's kind of my...
No, and that's the thing. And I will also say that we hear from our legislators, like, we're there, chambers are there, but they say, where are the businesses? We want to hear from them because, we're a chamber and we have, our talking points and we do go out and talk to businesses, our clients, so your
Right.
clients and my clients and other, but they want to hear from them directly, because when they just hear from us as chambers, they're like, okay, blah,
Right.
blah, blah. You don't like it. We
Hmm.
get it, you know. So it's just important, to your point, to have your voice be heard.
Right.
And I think
Hmm.
too, businesses sometimes feel like it's scary to give testimony because it sounds
Hmm.
scary. Like, like I tell my clients, I'm like, we're going to do an HR audit, and we change the name of it. We're going to do an HR practices review, because an HR
Right.
practices review sounds a lot less invasive and painful than an
Then an
audit.
audit.
Yeah. So when you
That's
say
right.
you're going to go give testimony in Annapolis, it's like, I don't. I don't want to do
Mm-mm.
that. That sounds scary. I mean, aside from the I got to leave my office, go spend the day, and all of that, it seems scary. So, what is really giving testimony, and what are the ways that people can give testimony?
So, aside from going to Annapolis and testifying, if you really feel passionate, I would say drive to Annapolis and do it. But if you don't, not that you don't feel passionate, I shouldn't say that, but there are other ways that you don't have to drive. You can write a letter to your representative. You can call your representative. You can ask to meet with your representative in your jurisdiction when they are out of session and set up a meeting and just say, this is what I'm concerned about. This is how it impacts my business.
Mhm.
Um, I will kind of put in a little plug for the Howard County Chamber because we kind of pride ourselves on making sure that there are events where our business, I guess, members can meet their legislators, where they can
Yeah.
talk and they can ask questions. We do a couple of events during the year because it is difficult for business owners to drive to Annapolis and get down there, but we try to make it accessible. So those are all the many ways that you can participate.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that that's important to know, because I don't think that a lot of businesses really know that that's an option for
Mm-hmm.
them. And sometimes they don't know how to find their legislators. And one thing about the Maryland General Assembly, which is different than some states, we have what is deemed to be part time. And in defense of our legislators, they do not work part time, okay?
Right.
They really are doing things all year.
Right.
However, because they're technically in session from January to April, they're considered part-time. So they are out, and the rest of the time they are out
Right.
meeting and
They
learning.
are.
And that's your opportunity to really get out there, find your legislators, meet them, schedule meetings.
Mm-hmm.
We even have been encouraging people to invite them to see your office, how people work, to come to your organization and really see things, because it helps them to really understand real time
Right.
the impact and what it looks like for the people, the employers and the businesses that they represent. And I
Right.
think that a lot of times it's not that they don't care, it's sometimes that they don't know. And there's only so many times that they want to listen to me and Cheryl.
But
They
well,
like
they
us,
like us.
but they don't
Yes.
want to keep hearing
No,
the
they don't want to keep
same
hearing
thing
from us.
all the time from us.
And there is proof that advocacy does work. And when a bill is introduced in Annapolis, the first, I guess, draft of the bill is never the draft that is ultimately passed.
Correct.
And the reason that is because of the advocacy or because of the voices that are heard. And if you want something changed, you have to have some type of a voice. And I know we're going to talk about cannabis, but that's an example of, you know, yes, it was a voter referendum to make recreational cannabis legal to a certain extent, but how it impacts business owners and what that looks like is a result of advocacy, as a result of members speaking up and saying, wait a minute, I can't have my forklift operator, under the influence at work. I don't know how I'm supposed to navigate, you know, as a government contractor, the federal government telling me that I have to test for marijuana. So what does that look like? And that is all part of the conversation that we have with our legislators, that we have in Annapolis, and they tweak things
Yes.
to an extent,
Yes.
whether it may be small, but it does. It changes the ultimate outcome of that legislation.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And so, talking about cannabis, July 1st is when it went live. that recreational
I say
adult
July 2nd was the date that everybody tested, random drug testing. I'm just kidding.
Okay,
I
yes.
don't know.
Well, let me just
I
say
have no
this
idea.
though. So you would have thought that there was going to be some type of zombie apocalypse the way that people were acting, that
Right.
and it's like July 1st came and went, and there were no more people under, because at the end of the day, the people that were going to use cannabis were using cannabis. We didn't acquire new cannabis users
Right.
on July 1st. It just was no longer illegal for them
Right.
to do it, right?
Good way to look at it.
Yeah. So it's like, employers had all these questions, and it's good to ask questions. You want to make sure that you're clear, but it's like, it's not anything that we really need to create all these new policies for, because even prior to, people couldn't be in safety sensitive jobs and be under the influence of anything, any type of intoxicant, right?
Well, and I think that that's the biggest question with cannabis is how do you define under the influence? And I get that question a lot, and I'm an attorney, not a scientist. So under the influence is something that I know that the powers that be are looking into that. And, we can define what under the influence of alcohol is, but no one has yet to determine what the influence of cannabis looks like. So a lot of clients have just taken that off the testing panel, and really looking at, are you able to perform the functions of your job? Really, that's what it comes down to. You just want to make sure that your employees are able to perform their job responsibilities in a safe manner, because we have to make sure that everybody's safe. Like that's, part of the OSHA standards. But, so there's things out there to protect you from that. If you test for it, if you don't test for it, if you have to test for it because you have a government contract, you have to test for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the federal government hasn't changed, so.
Correct. And I mean, I think that those things make sense, right? Like government contracts require that you have a drug and alcohol-free workplace, period, right? So that's it, or drug-free workplace. That's it. Across the board.
I have a concept.
I know.
Makes
So that makes sense. But at the end of the day, if we have legalized adult use cannabis, you don't do a breathalyzer every time somebody comes in the door for work, do you?
I do that for my kids.
Yeah, well, yes, yes. You can buy those at CVS.
But no, we do not.
Right. So it's like, don't create something new.
Right.
Just don't, because the same way that you would visually determine whether you were going to send someone for a reasonable suspicion drug test, you would still apply those same standards.
Absolutely.
So just have the reasonable suspicion drug test. Have solid policies around your expectations that people will not report to work under the influence, which again, I understand under the influence has different definitions. But I did read though, or someone was telling me that they're coming up with some tests to determine, or trying to come up with some tests to determine the recency of use, right? So it will be interesting
so they'll be able to
to
come
see.
up with that. That's interesting.
Yeah, so it'll be it's interesting to see where that goes or how that happens, because they're like, yeah, we want to see, like, did you use it 10 minutes ago?
Right.
Or was it 10 hours ago? Because if it was 10 hours, because, tests just, you can't tell. So if it was 10 hours ago, then you were home, right?
Right.
So, and again, the level of
testing
intoxication.
positive doesn't necessarily mean that you're under the influence.
That's correct. Yes.
And that's why you have to really examine how it impacts what that employee is doing in the workplace during working hours.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So I just, I think the main thing is that we want to make sure that our businesses know is that they need to get involved. Don't make things harder than they are. Call your attorney and make sure you have great HR. I think that's it, right?
Pretty much.
All right.
Pretty basic.
Okay, I love it. Well, thank you for joining us for the after show, and we will see you on the next episode of HR and Cocktails.